little bit afraid of the new technology, but I'll try and embrace it.
Welcome to the Automotive Business Podcast, where we sit down with the architects of the trade to find the tactical edge in your business motoring world. Whether you are an independent dealer or part of a national network, we are here to throw a spotlight on the margins, the markets, and the machines. I'm Adrian Simpson, and today we go from the forecourt to the flexible lease. In the race to net zero, the UK car market is currently behaving like a tale of two halves. While London is charging ahead with 1 in 5 leases now being fully electric, northern counties and the Midlands are leaning heavily on the reliability of the petrol and hybrid. My guest today is a veteran strategist with deep roots in the leasing and finance sector. Gareth Roberts is the strategy director at Central Contracts, a powerhouse in the UK broker market that consistently ranks at the top of the industry league tables. With a data set drawn from over 18,000 recent orders, Gareth has a unique vantage point on what UK drivers are actually putting on their driveways in 2026. From identifying the hybrid boom led by women and retirees to spotting the massive opportunity in used vehicle PCH, he is one of the most insightful voices in the remarketing world. Gareth, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Now, let's kick it straight off. I can tell by your dulcet tones that you are from somewhere in the north of England. Is that right?
Yeah, originally from Cumbria, but moved to Manchester when I was 18. I went to uni there and I've just never left.
So you moved from Cumbria to the balmy southern reaches of Manchester. And I want to talk about the north-south divide. Now, in your latest data shows that Londoners are twice as likely to lease an EV as drivers in West Yorkshire. How much of this do you think is down to infrastructure?
London does have the best infrastructure. The ease of use is a big incentive, but the ULEZ has forced people down that path. I know that's now changing, but once people tend to go with an EV, once they get used to it, they've already put their own charger in at home, then they tend to just stick with it. So yeah, I think up north, infrastructure isn't quite as good, although it's getting better. People aren't as comfortable with it as people down in London.
Do you think there is a cultural difference there? Is there anything in that, or is it just down to infrastructure?
Anywhere around London, it's so easy to actually jump on a tube or a train and get wherever you need. That's just not as easy in the north.
I was thinking people in the north are maybe less comfortable with the idea of an EV. Maybe it's progress that they're not comfortable with and they were happier with the internal combustion engine. But that's just me thinking maybe there's a north-south divide there that doesn't actually exist.
Possibly. I mean, these things may be going on in people's decision-making, but fundamentally it comes down to the cost and how comfortable people are with using the technology, I think.
Now, the hybrid capital, Surrey, where I am from, and I can only apologise, has emerged as the hybrid leader with over 27% of orders opting for this powertrain. Why is this specific middle ground resonating so strongly with your customers compared to full electrification?
To be honest, that question has really stumped us. I've asked a few people and we can't pin down why people in that area are more likely to have a hybrid. The only thing we can think is that they may not have those links into the city that they may need. So hybrids, it's a perfect option for the best of both worlds, still needing to have something that's economical and also a low CO2. But if they need to do a long distance in a different direction, they don't need to worry about plugging it in.
It is fascinating that one county has stood out with quite a large percentage opting for that. This must be things that you go through all the time and see, hang on, why is this happening?
Yeah, we do it quite often. It's great to spot the trends, but sometimes there's just no rhyme and reason for it. We look at the data, but we don't actually survey the customer and say, why did you choose? Just because there's so many customers to actually go through. So maybe that will have to be on our next hit list of finding out the reasons why they're making those decisions. Probably interesting for everyone to know why that's actually happening.
Now, you've described used car PCH as a massive opportunity that many dealers and manufacturers are ignoring. Why do you believe this model will become the dominant way to move petrol, diesel, metal as we approach the 2035 deadlines?
As we go to 2035, I do feel that people will still be resistant for whatever reason to electric vehicles. Once we can't actually sell a new electric vehicle from 2035, 2030, wherever it may land, petrol leasing and hybrid leasing, I feel will then become quite popular, at least for 3, 5, 6 years while those vehicles wash through into the used market.
So you think there's still plenty of life left in the petrol and diesel dogs yet?
Definitely. The overall sales are going up gradually, but they're not going up as quick as the targets may want them to. So ultimately, I think until there is something that says you cannot buy one, that's the only way it's going to improve. But even then, if there's an option for a customer to have a used petrol vehicle for 3 years, I think people will still need it. There's going to be a need for it. 10 years' time, we may have electric vehicles that can charge within 10 minutes. They might do 600 miles on the charge. As it stands right now, we haven't got that. So people will always look to something that means that they're not as tied to a plug for X amount of time.
Do you think it's just basically the infrastructure? I know quite a lot of manufacturers now have got it down. You see the figures, it's down from 20% to 80% in about 20 minutes, but that still isn't quick enough for some people.
Yeah, that does exist, but that costs 90 pence a kilowatt. By the time you've charged your big batteried vehicle at 80, 90 pence a kilowatt, it's as much as filling up your petrol and diesel tank, because those chargers only exist generally in public or at motorway service stations or in the city, and it's horrendously expensive to do. But a home charger, which is what the vast majority of people, if we're going to get good uptake into EVs, are going to have, that will only charge at probably 7 kilowatts, 11 kilowatts. So they're never going to be able to do a fast charge at home, because the investment is massive to put in those really quick chargers.
Are those quick chargers at a reasonable rate? Is that on somebody's agenda right now?
I mean, it has to be, but it's the cost to put them in. You know, the cost for just a business to put in a a relatively slow charger nowadays, a 50 kilowatt, is phenomenal. And then you need to look at a bank of more than one. You need to look at 5, 10 for businesses to look at putting an employee for their employees, depending on how many they have. I think it's on people's radar, but it's a huge cost.
Now, moving on, we talk a lot in the podcast about the new Chinese brands that are coming onto the scene, have been on the scene for quite a while, and they seem to be dominating. They seem to be capturing people's imaginations. I think I'm right in saying that JQ at the moment is the fastest growing brand in the UK. Now, Chinese manufacturers have identified brokers as the perfect channel to get vehicles to UK customers quickly. Why is the broker model more attractive to these new entrants than traditional franchise dealer networks? In an industry that moves as fast as this one, a weekly update isn't always enough. For the daily intelligence that franchise and independent dealers rely on, make sure you're heading over to Motor Trade News. From live market shifts to the latest trade pings, we keep you informed between episodes. You're listening to the Automotive Business Podcast.
For a start, it takes a hell of a long time to actually get the franchise dealer networks up and running. It can take 6 to 12 months, and that's at a real rapid scale, which some of them have done. But in that time, the boats are landing with the vehicles on, and they need to sell them somewhere. So they're always interested in the corporate channels, but the corporate channels are notoriously difficult to get up and running quickly because of the tender processes. So the easy and quick method is to speak with the brokers. The people that are working as the heads of or the fleet directors in the new manufacturers generally already know quite a lot of the brokers from their previous experience, because they've been hired because of their experience in the sector. So they speak to a few of us that are able to move the vehicles that they have around them at that point.
When do those conversations start? How long has this been a thing in your world, and how much percentage-wise would you say it's taking up, your average month?
Motor JQ have been in the market a little bit longer than Cherry, the newer brand. Cherry launched, I think, in September in the UK. By October, there was vehicles in the market, and then now Cherry is our biggest brand at the moment, taking up probably 20% of our orders alone. It's come out of nowhere, but people love the product. There's a good level of discount with them, getting to a right price point with a plug-in hybrid generally. We just keep rolling from month to month as the boats keep landing.
I think what's fascinating for me is how readily UK buying public has been enthusiastic to have these cars, to own these cars. There isn't any brand loyalty anymore. It's just, if it looks good and it's reasonably priced, we'll drive it.
We started to find this a few years ago when I think it was the Kia EV6 came into the market, which was a lovely looking car. It was a bit of a head turner, and people thought, particularly if they're on a company car scheme and it landed on there, they thought, I'll give that a try instead of one of the traditional, premium German manufacturers. And from that point, electric, we thought, seemed to be up there as a premium, keeping up with the Joneses. It was no longer I have to have a brand. It was an electric car was also up there as something that was different because the technology was so good. They've definitely hit the ground running. And after people tend to try one or one of the new brands, those traditional manufacturers seem to be finding it to get those customers back because the vehicles coming over are well made. They've got all technology on them. So customers get everything they want at probably a much better value deal.
The conversations I've had with people, it's almost as if the arrival of EVs into everyone's public consciousness was the line in the sand to think it's a new technology. It makes sense to have some sort of state-of-the-art Chinese or overseas manufacturer making it. So the arrival of EVs fitted in with these new brands perfectly. It's not as if they're trying to sell internal combustion engines, in which some of them are, but it's just the two came perfectly hand in hand.
It came in the right time when customers are looking for more value. They need more bang for the buck, and the manufacturers brought exactly that without having to add loads of options on. The specs, most of them have brought in one or two specs for the vehicle, so there's a low and a high, or there's only one spec, and it's got everything you'd ever want on it, and probably a lot of things you've never had before. So once you've had all of those bits of toys and bells and whistles in your vehicle, you'd find it struggle to go back the other way and have a vehicle without them then.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking when you're saying that, I'm thinking of the Amoda karaoke microphones that come as standard on their top of the range. I'm not sure how many people are deploying those on an average journey, but I get what you mean.
Yeah.
Now, you have stated that any concerns about residual value destabilizations are offset by the OEM need to move metal. At what point does a tactical discount from a new brand stop being an opportunity and start being a risk for the long-term leasing market?
I think the discounts generally only need to go one way as the residuals go the other way over time. The trick we found is that if one particular funder or a deal in the market looks so cheap that everyone can see that it's going to cause a challenge, they could take 1,000 orders on it. Well, that funder's going to take a little bit of pain on it, but the other funders then see that deal and think the RV is going to drop. So they all start to do it. And if it happens too quickly, it causes the discount level then needed to get to where the price point will sell is too high, and the manufacturer has to go in a different direction. So it's important to not flood the market with too much discount too early and gradually keep it up, and that reduces the risk of the RV dropping too quickly, because otherwise the only way to get the RV to go up on the same product really is to bring out a new model year. But Cap are totally wise to that. If it's just a facelift, if there's nothing new, if the technology is the same, they're not going to put a much stronger RV on it. So funders have got to be really careful.
Talking about punters being careful, there's currently, I think it's fair to say, universal bafflement over the proposed 2028 electric vehicle mileage tax. Now, how do you realistically advise a customer, say on a 4-year EV lease today, when they have no idea what their road tax bill will look like in 2028?
Ultimately, you can, but it's unthought out. I think I don't think the government know how they're going to manage it. And there was MOTs was mentioned. Well, that's after 3 years. There's all sorts of scenarios with vehicles that might be pool cars. There's a myriad of things where a vehicle might get used for a few miles, and how do you actually track it without having the technology built into the vehicle? It's going to be nigh on impossible. So we're not getting any noise from our customers at the moment asking us about it. The general feeling internally and within the industry is that it probably won't happen, but I can see if people are running a lot of vehicles, particularly EVs, it's got to be on the radar. But from the PCH market, it's not going to cause any concern this year, next year, I don't think.
You don't think there's going to be any noticeable effect of people thinking, well, I mean, because they've got all these incentives in place for you to buy an EV, especially if you've got a small limited company and setups like that. You don't think there's any reason now people thinking, do you know what, I won't have the EV after all because I don't know what's in the distance. I'll just stick to what I know.
Yeah, there could be, definitely. Again, the PCH market hasn't got the incentives that the businesses have on EV, the benefit in kind that again, it's going up, but PCH customers are only they're quite short term generally. They do only want the vehicle for 3 years. We're 2 years away from that potentially coming in. So I think they're taking the strong deal at the moment. However, people are still taking lots of petrols, so it might be that they're giving incentives in one hand off the OTR price of the vehicle, the grants that are in place, but actually the VED announcement is stemming demand the other end. Until you actually survey some people and ask them what do they think about it, you don't really know. But all it does is just create confusion in the market. And for us, we're still 80+% ICE vehicles, so it's not affected our run rate on anything particularly at all.
We talk about incentive, you mentioned there, just in a subdued national economy, I think it's fair to say, where retail confidence is pretty low. Are aggressive commit to purchase tactical deals the only thing keeping the PCH market afloat right now?
I wouldn't say that they're the only thing. We're still taking orders on all sorts of vehicles that aren't necessarily a bulk discount batch. So ultimately, the vehicles are coming into the market from the manufacturers. They've set themselves quite big targets, particularly the Chinese manufacturers. So they've got to go somewhere. And the PCH market is the obvious place for a lot of these things. And we try not to look too far ahead. If all those batches stop tomorrow, would the business still go? Yeah, it would. The volume may drop a little bit, but we would still be here, and the PCH market would still exist until one manufacturer, and it only takes one to make their move. They put a deal into the market. The other manufacturers look at that and follow generally. So I don't think it's the only thing propping it up.
So we'll talk about technology for a second. The vehicles are very tech heavy these days, and you've got costly parts. So many drivers are leaning toward maintenance inclusive packages. Is the standalone lease dying in favour of a total care package, do you think? If you're enjoying the Automotive Business Podcast, then why not check out our video reviews on business motoring, where we test drive everything from the venerable Range Rover right through to the latest Chinese SUVs, allowing you to make the very best informed decision for your next fleet purchase.
Our maintenance penetration has lifted over the last 6-7 years from about 25% to now 48%. So there's a definite shift towards it, just because of the obvious hassle-free, tires done, your punctures done, servicing done, particularly with EVs where no one's really exactly sure on the cost of how much it's going to be to maintain. So there's a shift towards it, but 50-50 largely. That's where our figures show that maintenance is at the moment.
I know plenty of young people in their late 20s who do not have a driving licence. When I was growing up, which was an awfully long time ago, it was seen as a rite of passage. You get your licence, you somehow get hold of a car through parents, or if it's really cheap, and you get on the road. And it just seems to me that it's not seen as being that kind of accomplishment or accolade anymore. It's very much optional.
I don't think people are as desperate to get that on the car as quickly. I think it's different again in rural areas. I mean, up in Cumbria, there just isn't the infrastructure to get about as easy. So you're either reliant on a parent. There might be the odd bus or a train that'll take you between the big conurbations. So I think in more rural areas, there probably is still the impetus to get your licence. But in the cities, I think the age of people passing the tests, some people may just never bother, but the age will certainly not be 17, 18, the desperate. It'll probably be well into the mid-20s when they actually can start to afford to take the necessary things like getting a vehicle, insuring it, and taking the lessons.
If you're a broker and you do what you do, I'm quite interested to see if you have an opinion on how to crack the used EV car market, because they're flooding onto the market. The batteries are really good. Nobody believes the batteries are really good, so they're not shifting. How do you crack that nut?
It's really difficult because the market, from the manufacturer's point of view, they're pushing hard to sell new vehicles, and there's also a new government incentive on new vehicles, so the price of them is strong. So to take if you're a PCH customer, to take a used vehicle 3 years old, the technology is already really outdated if it's 3 years old now, because it's moved on so quickly in the last 3 years. The price point has still got to come sensibly underneath a new one. And I think that's the challenge for the funders, is trying to get that price point right at a time when the RVs have been volatile over the last 4 or 5 years on EVs.
What is the single biggest barrier to EV adoption for the average 50-year-old driver in 2026?
Personally, I think there is a lot of misinformation, in the press. There's negative news around, fires, battery degradation, lots of things that might be isolated incidents, but generally EVs are pretty safe. The batteries hold up pretty well. The infrastructure is one thing, particularly when you get outside of the southeast generally. But the cost of public charging is a massive turn off for most people. If you do take a vehicle and you need to go from Manchester down to Bournemouth, you're going to have to charge at some point using a public charger, and it's going to be expensive to fill up. And the last point really on that is it's just convenience. People still want to be able to do everything at the drop of the hat, plug it in and charge in 10 minutes. Technology will change that, but as it stands, that's not there.
And now for our quick fire round, where we ask some salient, pithy questions, hoping for some insightful, succinct answers. What we normally get is some insightful, not such succinct answers. If you had a billboard outside a dealership anywhere, in 5 words or less, what is the future of vehicle ownership?
Looking quite far forward, I would say electric-powered autonomous white goods. Now, I say white goods for the reason that I feel as though like with a lot of other electronics, they have gone in the direction of disposable. And with batteries in vehicles, there is no real solution yet for these. If they go wrong when they're 5, 6 years old, they're so expensive to actually replace and put new ones in that it isn't worth bothering. So younger vehicles, EVs, are getting scrapped or taken off the road. So I think we will at some point have autonomy in the vehicles. How much or little, I'm not sure, but I think a vehicle will become like a mobile phone or a washing machine, and you will just use it for X amount of time, and then it will be either it'll have possibly a second life, but then it will be disposed of a lot sooner than you would. They won't be classic electric vehicles, I don't think, in my lifetime anyway.
Now, one final question, Gareth. If you were a car, what car would you be?
I'm into my classic cars. I've got a Mark II Escort and a Mark II Golf. So I would be something 80s retro, a little bit afraid of the new technology, but I'll try and embrace it. If someone puts a new stereo in me, then I'll go with it.
That is a great way to describe yourself. And I'm sure your friends and family would be thoroughly chuffed that they were sharing their lives with the human equivalent of a Mark II Escort. There's nothing wrong with that. Gareth Roberts from Central Contracts. It's been great talking to you. Thank you very much for joining the Automotive Business Podcast.
Brilliant. Thank you.
That was Gareth Roberts, proving that the UK car market is far from a monolith and that flexibility is the key to surviving the transition. If you're not watching the regional data, you are missing the real story of the UK forecourt. You've been listening to the Automotive Business Podcast. For the daily pulse of the trade and deep dive analysis, make sure you check out Motor Trade News and Business Motoring. I'm Adrian Simpson, and we will see you on the next shift from the forecourt to the fleet.